everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the second season of Behind Your Eyes, my video series on mental health. Today I have Renee as my guest. So Renee, would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, so I'm Renee Schulte. I live in Des Moines, Iowa, and I am a therapist. I've been a therapist for over 20 years and presently work as a consultant working in mental health policy and helping others figure out how to impact policies and make them healthy at home and at work and in the community.
Well, my first question on the series is always with a sincere, how are you doing?
Well, I'm actually doing really well. Thanks for asking. I work really hard at balancing work and life, and I had a really bad health issue a while back. It's been about 7-8 years in a chronic health condition. And so I had to recover from being a workaholic, couldn't do that anymore. And so I've really put things into practice so that I'm actually doing really well. That makes me more responsible for helping all the others that are not doing really well right now. But yeah, it's going really good. So thank you for asking.
Oh, thank you. And you're a policymaker and you work with state government agencies to optimize their mental health services. And could you tell me a bit how you got to that position?
Yeah, so I was a let's see where I started. Started as a therapist and then worked as an in-home foster parent, taking care. It was called therapeutic foster care at the time. And the goal was to take care of high needs kids and to help them move from institutions into like lower level foster homes or more stable long-term care. And the system didn't work really well for my kids. I had kids getting advanced through school without reading. I had kids, you couldn't get their records to get them the help they needed. And during that season, was recruited to run for political office. And there was kind of a funny story, but a senator came and said, well, if you ran for office, why would you run? And I said, to fix the mental health system. And he says, well, nobody runs to do that. And I said, well, that's the only reason I would do it. I'm not doing it. I don't want to be in public office. So we ran for public office and we got elected and we redesigned our system. And so we redesigned the system in our state. I got to work then as a consultant on the policy side of it and write the rules and the regulations that came with those law changes. And then I've since gone on and done that in other states and other organizations. And so it really came from the need to fix policies that were just not working for my kids. And that has changed everything.
And so it was from your personal experience to see, like you could witness yourself, like, okay, this is not working. And then that turned into your passion for wanting to fix it.
That's right. And I didn't have any background, in fact, or interest. I didn't like history. I never took a political science class. I never took a law class. And so I'm not the person you would think of to work in policy, but I really care about mental health. And the rules and the policies around mental health sometimes are what's holding us back. It's just because that's the way it's always been. And a lot of times you can actually change that. And people, what I found were the elected officials at the State House just didn't know anything about my line of work. So they weren't making laws and rules on purpose to hurt what we do. They just weren't educated in how it connected. And so when I got there and started educating on some of the things that were wrong, it was really, really easy to change it because it was just a matter of educating people on this isn't working. And, you tell the stories of your kids and how you couldn't get records or whatever. And they were like, why? And I was like, I don't know why. And they're like, that shouldn't be. And I'm like, I agree. So then how can we fix it? And so it was really eye-opening to me because it wasn't near as difficult as people make it think, because people just don't know sometimes that some of those things are wrong.
Yeah, it's just, well, an ignorance, but not on purpose.
No, they wouldn't want that for their kids either. So they just assume that it's working, right? They just assume that things are okay. And then you have to tell them. And then they're like, oh, well, that's not right. So we should fix that.
That's not what we want.
Start to get to work, right? You start working.
Yeah. No, a lot of people in healthcare work in healthcare for a reason, because they have a passion about it. And when you see that it's not working, it must be really frustrating to know, like, come on, it should be better. And that drive and passion must be what has driven you to do that.
Yeah, there's different types of people, though. Some people realize it's wrong but they don't know what to do next, or they don't want to put the effort and energy into fixing it. And so then they
Right.
just complain and are upset and grumpy that it's wrong. Or there's other people that are like, hey, that shouldn't be, we should be able to fix it. And so I just was raised that way. My brain just works differently. I'm just like, well, why? I always want to know, well, why is that a rule? And then
Right.
who said, and then can you change it? And sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay, but that's a very small number of things that we put up with, really. In our day-to-day world, we just assume that the rule is there for a really good reason.
Right.
And sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's no good reason why it's there, but nobody
Yeah.
ever questions it, right? And so
Yeah. Right.
just
Yeah.
learning to question, if that's the best practice and if we can change it, right? And I think it just takes being aware that
Yeah.
I don't feel good about this and asking questions about it. And you should be able to ask questions. And sometimes you can just fix
Yeah.
it by asking.
Yeah. And have you witnessed many changes in how mental health issues are being perceived?
Mhm.
Like
We have,
less stigma, maybe more openness, talking about it?
yeah. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of. So I ran for office now over 10 years ago. And when I was in office or running for office, nobody talked about mental health. It wasn't something that everybody talked about. This last election cycle where I live, every single mailer from every single person that was running mentions mental health. And that's
Oh,
huge. So we've,
yeah.
in that 15 years, it has really become a topic of conversation, and people want to talk about it. And it now is something that people run on for public
Yeah.
office. So when I was told nobody does that back then, no one would say that today, because there are people that specifically
Yeah.
want to make change in this space. And I'm very proud of that, being part of changing that conversation, because stigma
Yeah.
is a big problem still to this day.
Yeah.
But at least we're starting to talk about it, and it's
Yeah.
in the newspaper now, and people are starting to acknowledge there's an issue. And that's
Yeah.
the first step toward change, is people have to talk about it, that it's real, and that there's
Yeah.
something really wrong.
Yeah. And not stigmatize it or think that someone is crazy because they're having mental health issues, or it's a very true, and like most people in their lives will deal with some sort of mental health issues, whether it's anxiety or depression or loneliness. It's a whole broad range of issues that can be seen as mental health issues. So it's really important that the conversation is open about it.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And
it's
it's
very
become political some ways, which makes no sense, because
right.
everybody deals with health issues and everybody
Yeah.
deals with mental health. So that doesn't matter what party you're part of or what you believe,
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
impacts you. And so it doesn't make sense that we've sort of divided that, because we're all in that boat. And so
Exactly.
what I work really hard at doing is helping people realize, you can be upset about politics and whatever, but in this space, it doesn't make any sense. And you're really hurting the cause if you start talking that way, because you need to
Yeah.
be somebody that brings people together, because this is an everybody issue. And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
we need to work together. Whether we agree with each other on other things or not is not the point.
Yeah.
The issue
Exactly.
is mental health impacts us all. And so how
Yeah.
do we work forward together on that and not just fight about it? And that there's not a lot of good things happening in that space. There's a lot of people arguing about things, and it's like this needs a lot of work from all of us. We don't need to be picking
Yeah.
at each other or accusing people.
And for future generations, and what changes or improvements would you like to see in the mental health care?
Well, we're going to have a huge shortage of professionals in this field. All medical issues, any medical category is in this space, but that baby boomer population, they talk about a couple of big facts, but for every 4 that are retiring, there's only 1 new person entering the workforce right now across the board. And then when you start looking at the average age of psychiatrists in America is 55. That's not very young. And there's not that many coming into the pipeline. So for one, we have to figure out what to do to strengthen our workforce. We don't have enough workforce as it is in this space. And so every level of care has to figure out how to get more into the pipeline that want to do that work. And big picture issues with that are making sure reimbursements and payment is worth getting people into that field. Being a psychiatrist, you have your regular 4 years of college, you have your postdoc degree. So you're talking 3 to 4 to 5, depending on your specialty level of extra years post your regular college degree. And there's no real, it takes a long time to recuperate that kind of money to even pay back the student loans. And so
Yeah.
how are we going to encourage people to go into that field when they
Yeah.
could go be an anesthesiologist and make 3 or 4 times more
Yeah.
or something else? And so
Yeah.
there's got to be some real conversations about how do we draw people into the field and
Yeah.
support them and help them want to be and stay. Because if we don't have workforce, the rest of it doesn't matter. We can change
Exactly.
all kinds of policies about what we need, but we need people. And
Yeah.
we haven't treated our people in this space very well.
It's the same here in the Netherlands, where there are not enough doctors, and the hospitals everyone is overworked, especially during the COVID period. And
Mhm.
but it's like the people are leaving. They're not interested in the healthcare system anymore, because you work too many hours, you're underpaid, it's a lot of stress, people don't appreciate you enough. So I can see how frustrating it is to want to be in the healthcare, but it's just not like appealing enough to go there, to work in that area.
Right. And taking care of your own health in that space.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, when you have your doctors in that space and they work too many hours, they don't get time off, they get burnt out themselves. And so
Yeah.
we're dealing post-pandemic, even more burnout in that group. So the people that could afford to retire, this is worldwide, if they could afford to retire, did. And so the biggest number of people that left the workforce in the pandemic are 55 and older. Now, some of them are returning because they figured out that maybe financially that's not the best choice, but returning into wherever they want to go. Because as you know now, worldwide, there's more job opportunities than there are people in the workforce. And so just because they were in medicine before doesn't mean they need to go back to medicine, right? They could do anything. And so we're really fighting among lots of opportunity, and then lots of people who had money that could pull out of the system. And then if that's so much stress, why do that and harm yourself? And so during that pandemic, we started reflecting ourselves as to what do we need to be healthy, and some people got a taste of working at home who never got to work at home before, or the folks that were essential that had to work that entire time with all the PPE and everything. They're just exhausted. And so how do we go? Where do we go from here? That's a really big issue. And it's worldwide. It's not just in America, but America's got its own challenges, but workforce is going to be a problem.
Yeah, definitely. This is everywhere, every country, every hospital, it's everywhere. Yeah.
And we're all going to need hospital and healthcare as we age.
Exactly.
It's like we should all work on this because we're all going to need it. So it's a collective we worldwide, not political, but we all need to work in this space because we all are going to need these services.
And what do you think is the best way to solve this or start solving this?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, we have to deal with the burnout for those that are already there and try to keep the people that are in our systems healthy and in the system. And so that's where I work on that, creating policies within your work culture. If your work culture isn't healthy, you're not going to want to stay at work. So first of all, we have to stop the bleeding and stop letting, all the people leaving the profession. So putting some pieces together to deal with their burnout, to keeping them happy. And so I'm thinking about like retention in work. How do you retain employees? So how do we do that? And whether that's going to have to be financial, it's not all financial. Some of them are walking away and it has nothing to do with money. It's about the culture, the overtime, not feeling respected or listened to.
Just the work
so we have
pressure.
to deal with that piece first to stop people leaving. And then second, we're going to have to figure out how to entice people into this line of work, into having our training schools and everything kind of create that pipeline. And we've done that in different eras around the world. After different wars or different things, they would have kind of pipelines of training depending upon the things that the different countries needed. And we may have to go back to thinking about that. Like, I don't know exactly what you would call it, but if there's service corps that we could put together, or what is it that we're going to need to do to really get students interested in health and healthcare, and really
Yeah.
kind of prioritize that, because you're right, it is a worldwide shortage. So how do we not, think about that just from one country's perspective, but all of
Right.
us collectively?
Worldwide. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what is something that you think everyone should know about mental health and how it affects one's life?
Well, with mental health, right, we all have mental health, and mental health is a continuum, right?
Yeah.
There's not like good mental health and bad. It's not a switch. It's an up and down journey, right? And so some days we have better mental health than other days. And so what we need to think about is how to stay in tune with that and realize when we need help to ask for it. So
Yeah.
I really like to think about this as like a car, right? If I have a car that has lights going on and indicators that things are wrong, you have a choice. You can, when the first thing starts to go wrong, you can go to your mechanic and try to fix it, which might cost a little, or you keep going until it completely falls apart. And then you have to replace it, or you have to have major repairs. It costs a lot of money. And that's kind of how your own mental health and your own body is. You can either pay attention to the signs and warnings and, and handle that and get help early, and it costs a little and a little investment over time, or you crash and burn, and then you may or may not either have good physical health or mental. And one thing we don't think about is your mental health ties to your physical health. So in my case, when I was overworked and had that physical crash and burn, I wasn't more mental, but it was physical. So my body gave out physically instead of mentally. But other people, it just depends how you're wired. Some people will give out mentally and their body would be strong, but they're connected. And so we have to pay attention to all of those symptoms, right? So we're thinking about not just how I feel, but where's my heart rate today, or my stress level, or how am I breathing? Am I have short, shallow breaths, or nice, deep and relaxed breaths? And those tie together, and we're not really good at that. We talk about mental separate from physical. They're not. And so
there's a lot of disconnection there.
How do we help people with that? And then those are the skills you teach people, right? The breathing and the stress reduction, and the self-monitoring. And that helps our mental health, but it ties to our physical. So how do we help ground people in today, gratitude, and all of those things? Then that's where we need to focus to help people, because we can't just, everybody can't, we're already short staffed, right? So if everybody waits till it's a crisis and we're all in the emergency room, what are we going to do? We don't have enough people to try. So we have to start thinking a little upstream, right? Let's start dealing with it early, not waiting till we're all in the emergency room, because there's not enough people.
We have to reconnect to our bodies.
Yes,
because I really believe our body is talking to us the entire time. Because if there's something going on, it's not.
And I was really bad about that. And what my body was doing things like getting sick, like colds, and I would always have what they called upper respiratory, where it was like sinusy goo and stuff like that, pneumonia. And so my body really had illness, but it was all stress related. So it was a physical illness, but it took me years past that to start putting some dots together of like, I was really sick because of the lifestyle I was leading, and the lack of health and the lack of care for how I was caring for my body. And I didn't put that together. And to be fair, many doctors didn't either. They just gave me medicine to get better, but they never sat down and said, if you'd stop doing these other things, you might not have to be sick. It's almost like in America, for sure, that whole thing, there's no real care or pay for prevention. It's like they get paid when you show up with the big issues. And so there's no incentive for doctors to help you on the preventative side, because they only get paid when you come in their office. And so it's hard to tell a doctor, hey, I want to work at not coming back to see you, which is what I did with my chronic health doctor. I said, my goal is to take no medication and to not need you. And either we work together on that, or I'm going to have to find a different doctor, because I don't want to be in here the rest of my life. But there are not a lot of those people, right? There's a lot of doctors that's how they get paid. You come back and come back and come back. And so, we have to think about mind-body connection, and then preventative medicine, or at least early intervention, so that we're not waiting until someone is suicidal before it's the first time we've ever talked about this. There's a long ramp before we're suicidal or
Yeah.
homicidal. And we should
Mm.
be catching people a lot faster than
Yeah.
before they do something really serious.
I think most doctors focus, like you said, more on like what's going on. Oh, I have a cough, and they try to fix the cough and don't see like, okay, what is actually going on behind the symptoms that you have.
Right. How is it that, like for me, the upper respiratory was every single spring at the same
Mm.
month, just about almost yearly. You would
Yeah.
think somebody'd see a pattern and be like,
Right.
what's going on every year at this time that this happens? Now,
Yeah.
some of that could be spring allergies. In our case, in America, we have all the crops and all the stuff. And I mean, and part of that could be true, but the
Yeah.
underlying why I would get sick wasn't. It was just that my stress life would ramp up at those seasons. And
Right.
so, nobody put that together until I was really sick. And then I had to figure out, okay, how do I not live like this anymore? So I had to put some dots together about
Yeah.
what do I
But
need
it's
to
quite a
change.
shame that of course you were able to, connect the dots, but not everybody is able to do that. So I
No.
think, at least I hope that many doctors will see more like those connecting factors between like mental and physical health.
Well, I'm wondering if doctors, since there are going to be so many less, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to have to change the way they're thinking too, because they can't possibly just want everybody really, really sick to come
Right.
to them, right? There's not enough of them to go around. So maybe there's going to have to be some shift as to how we're caring for people, is what I'm hoping, because we
Yeah.
all can't, it's not sustainable to continue
Yeah.
everybody being in crisis. We can't do that. And the
No.
pandemic, if nothing else, showed us that, because everybody that needed hospital care during the pandemic bumped everybody else out who needed care
Right.
for other things.
Mm.
And so you have all kinds of stories of people who didn't, a lot of people's preventative care got put on the back burner. And then
Mm.
anything that they needed that was like more of a surgeries or a more elective type things that would have helped and benefited all got put on the back burner.
Yeah.
And so now, you're struggling to catch up. So like I have a chiropractor doctor friend whose wife passed for breast cancer, but
Mm.
hers had ramped back up during the pandemic. She'd had it for 5 or 6 years, but it had been pretty stable, but it ramped up during the pandemic and she couldn't get in to
Yeah.
the higher level of care because of the pandemic. And so then
Yeah.
she ended up passing away because it had gotten so much worse during that period where she could not get care. And that's unfortunately more common than more people are talking about. So now you're going
Yeah.
to start seeing post-pandemic some other people who could have probably been cared for, but
Yeah.
delayed. And some of that to do with their own anxieties and fears. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people who wouldn't go into hospitals or wouldn't go to doctors because they were afraid of catching something at the
Yeah.
doctors. And so then they put off their own care. And so now when they're going in, they're at a much higher level of need than they would have been if they'd have
Yeah.
gone 2 years ago. And so we're starting to see that catch up, and
Yeah.
it's not good.
Yeah. It takes a long time to catch up, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
happen to know in your country what your like the ongoing rate of anxiety and depression, like how many people have anxiety
Mm.
and depression at any given time that report that? Is that a number that you report in your country?
No, not that I'm aware of, but I'm
So
sure it is very
I'll
high.
give you an example. In America, we were hovering around 10-11% of people ongoing with depression and anxiety pre-pandemic. And
Mm.
now post-pandemic, we're hovering around 30% that
Oh,
report
wow.
that. So that's doubled. And
Yeah.
it didn't go back down. It didn't go back down.
No, no.
And so now we have a couple of things happen. Either more people are reporting it and feeling
Mm.
safe to report. So the reporting could be higher, but
Right.
in general, it's probably a lot more people are struggling. And so that's not good either, given we lost so many in the workforce. So
Yeah.
we've lost workforce, but the need is greater,
Yeah.
and we can document both. And so we're out of kilter. So it's access is going to be a big issue coming
Yeah.
up. It is now, and it's going to continue.
Yeah. And you said yourself that you had some mental health or health struggles. Could you talk a bit about this?
Yeah. So I ended up when I was elected during that season, I loved work. I work. I love work. When I had more time, free time, I would like to work. And it was for no other reason except I really liked to work. but I didn't take care of my physical body during that time. And so I wasn't sleeping well. I definitely didn't eat well. And I didn't think about it, but I had developed rheumatoid arthritis, which is a chronic inflammatory disease, and had that, and then only met with doctors, and they're like, oh, well, you need to take this medication. I even had a doctor tell me that there was no way I could fix that with nutrition or diet or exercise. And so basically take the medication. So I did, but the medication that I took was a biologic that lowers your immune system. And I ended up getting a lung infection. So I was a consultant working and had just redesigned the mental health system, had worked in the state doing all of that, but I was going to run for Congress in America. And I was actually going to announce within 2 weeks. Well, I was in the hospital, and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks because it was a really severe illness. I was not doing well. So I didn't run for Congress. And in fact, it ended my political career. That was the last I did of that, and had to, for the next year, take just medication to get rid of the infection. And then, so I went from this chronic infection to that. And that's when I started having conversations with doctors. And I was like, look, I don't want to be on medication the rest of my life, especially not medication that makes you potential more sick. I was like, this is not going to work. So I made some real significant changes in my life. And some of that was setting boundaries with myself. It was making sure I had a bedtime, making sure I got enough hours of sleep, making sure that I started eating correctly and things that I should not eat. So a lot of people teach that you should be able to eat in moderation. And I'm sure there's great people that know how to do that. My body doesn't know how to do that. I am one of these people that either eats nothing of something or way too much of that thing. And so I just have no in-betweens on that. So I had to stop some certain things that are just not good for me. Things like soda. I would drink lots of Diet Coke or lots of Coke, depending on the season. If I thought sugar was better, I would do regular. If I thought, no calorie was better, I'd do none of that's good. So I just went to none because there's no really good reason for me to have any of that. So I had to go to zero because if I didn't, I was doing a lot. And then I can't sleep because of the caffeine. And so it was really impacting my sleep, and my sleep was impacting my health, and round and round. So I worked really hard through some seasons of that, and am now in remission. And I have had no chronic illness now for about 4 years. So it's possible. My doctor told me it wasn't. And I said, I'm going to prove you wrong. And now I have to see him. I think they keep me in the system so I don't get kicked out because the new patient appointment is so far in the future. So I think I can go in once every 2, maybe 3 years now. And then I stay in the system as a patient, just in case. He's not totally convinced that I'm going to be okay. So he's like, just in case. I'm like, all right, but I don't need you anymore. So, but it took a lot of work. I mean, but you can do it. But I had to think, right, and put the mental pieces together of what happened. How did I get here? And then I sought help. It wasn't just me. I had to find some smart people to put the blanks together, right? That could help me fill in the blanks. So I've used nutritionists, I've used integrated doctors, I've used chiropractors, I've used mentors, I've used counselors, I've used coaches, I had a goal, and then I would use whatever tool I needed to try to get to that goal. And I would try one, and if that didn't really work, I'd switch to a new strategy. But the goal was always to get off medication and to be healthy. And so I had to try a lot of things and make a combination. So now I'm under care of an integrated doctor with some supplements that I do most of the time, and take care of myself with chiropractic care, see my doctor regularly, all of those kind of good things. I don't have any kind of weird diet, nothing like that. But just, setting some boundaries. I have a bedtime. I go to bed the same time every day, and I will probably the rest of my life.
Yeah, definitely.
But it took help. I mean, I had to go to people and go, okay, what did I miss? And it was a lot. It was a lot because I was so busy working. I didn't know. I was like, oh, okay. I missed a lot. So it wasn't, that's when you have to decide. You have to humble yourself and ask for help, because you're like, okay, I don't like this result. What can I do differently? And find quality people in your space that will help you. And therapy is the same way, right? If there's mental components to that, it's like, I was so sick that I didn't have mental illness so much because wasn't even thinking straight. So I was on oxygen for a long time and all this. So there's chunks of time I don't remember. And so my mind was just more, my body just said, nope, we're not doing that.
Yeah. We're done for now.
Yeah. We're done.
Yeah.
And so now I have to, today, I have a vision of what I want in my life, and I have to say no a lot of things. And because it's really easy for me to go back to too much. I'm a too much kind of person. And so work, I could do too much. Play, I could do too much. And so how do I just like stay grounded? And that takes ongoing work. And so still having people in my life that can say, hey, you're getting too far this way or that way. You have to have people that can spot their blind spots for you. You have to have help. You can't do
I've read a book with people with chronic illnesses. They have a tendency to be people pleasers and have trouble saying no and setting proper boundaries.
Yes.
So it's essential.
And part of that people pleaser part is the helper part. So I'm a helper by profession too. So the way I got to that chronic illness, we'd had this flood in our community, and I had run for public office, and we were rebuilding our community with a flood. Well, I didn't worry about me. I was so into helping the community and helping rebuild and do all the things that I just put my head down and went to work, which is what we do in a helping. And the doctors do that too, nurses do that too. And so we get so interested in helping others because that's who we are, that we forget we need to help ourselves sometimes. And we give everything there is to give physically, and your body shuts down. And so that's exactly what happened. I just was serving, and it was fun, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I loved helping people, but I didn't think about, hey, if I don't take care of me, I will have nothing left to give. And at one point my body just is like, you got to stop. You're stopping until you get this together. So then I had to figure out what to do after that. And so sometimes that's our helping. We are the worst, and we also are the worst at not asking for help.
Right.
We're not good at that. We help our people. Doctors don't ask for help. The adage is doctors make the worst patients. And so we don't ask for help. Therapists don't ask for help. And so we get ourselves in a mess, and then we think we can pull it up by our bootstraps and do it alone, and we can't. And so that's part of this is we have to be connect mind to body, but then realize when we need to ask for help and not be so proud that we don't. And that's a big, big piece, because we're human and we have the same physical needs as every other single person. But sometimes we think somehow because we're in the helping profession that we don't need the same tools. We don't even do what we teach. That's the worst part. We teach breathing. We don't use it. We teach meditation. We don't use it. I mean, come on. Right? But how many professionals have you met? And they're like, oh yeah, I don't do that. But you teach it?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's terrible.
It's awful. Like, are you for real?
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you think about that. If you're the owner of a Mexican restaurant and you won't eat your food because you don't like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a therapist, but you won't go to therapy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't come to you as a therapist if you don't believe in it enough to go to help yourself.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
You're a terrible advocate for the profession. But there's tons of us out there that are just like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
Nope, you're not good. And you have blind spots if you don't ask for help. And so part of it was, well, I was so completely clueless that I didn't even know I needed help until I was landed flat on my back in the hospital. And then I was like, holy crap, what did I do? How did I get here?
I did need help.
Oh man, I don't want to live like this. Oh no.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, who can help figure out what just happened? So it took some time to sit back and go, oh, that's a red flag. Oh. And I was teaching stuff like this the whole time. Just crashing and burning as I'm teaching others stress relief.
It's weird how your brain can function like that. Like I know how it works. I'm teaching everyone how it works, and then you ignore.
But I'm not listening at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Oops.
Creating awareness. That's where it starts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is still still a work in progress.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And if you could talk to a younger version of yourself, what would you tell her?
Oh my gosh, work is not everything.
Mm.
Yes, work is fun, but there's so much else in life that's also fun. And it has
Mm-hmm.
to be a balance because your body is going to tell you that you need
Mm.
rest and you've got to learn how to rest. And I did not know how to rest. I thought rest was boring. I thought it was dumb. I don't understand why you needed it. And I would skip it just because there was other things more, quote, fun to do. And I didn't have an understanding or a concept of any of that. And so I
Yeah.
would tell my younger self, hey, sleep's gonna make a big deal in your life. And not
Yeah.
just in your attitude, but just a lot of things you don't even realize how important it is. And so
Yeah.
just knowing that work's not everything and going, making sure you think about sleep and the whole. I mean, I really was raised to think that sleep was sort of just a waste of time and that the less I
Mm.
had to do of it, the more I could do of everything else. And I
Right.
just didn't understand that the regeneration and the renewal and all the important parts of sleep. And that really messed up a lot of things. And then I had a job where sleep really wasn't something that was prioritized. And so
Mm.
the job pushed me into lack of sleep, but I didn't even think about that in a way to try to mitigate that or to add extra sleep elsewhere or to do other things to kind of work around that tough season. I didn't think about it being a challenge, so I didn't even do anything to sort of promote my health during that time. Where
Right.
if you've got a job or you've got a life where you can't get the sleep you need, then you need to balance that with either additional exercise or supplements or different things to try to balance. But I
Yeah.
didn't even have enough understanding to do that. And so I would
Yeah.
tell my younger self to learn a lot more about rest and the importance of it, and
Yeah.
that work
And
is not all there is to
yeah.
do. There's lots more fun out there
Yeah.
besides that.
And what is your favorite way to do self-care?
I'm actually a person, I do lots of things, but I like long distance, like bike rides that if I ride far enough, my brain actually clears up and I can think more creatively. And so I have figured out that there's a workout side to it, but then there's
Mhm.
also a sit at the pool and get sunshine and read a book. And so there's kind of a balance between I need both types of rest. I need active rest where I'm doing something like physically engaging, so my body is sweating and really thinking and getting my brain clear. I need that piece, but I also need the just sit down downtime, not reading self-help books, not reading books in my field, but things that are just fun and
Mhm.
making myself do fun.
Yeah.
I have found I actually am pretty good at it once I remember and tap back into that, but kind of going
Yeah.
back to the stuff I used to like as a kid.
Yeah.
Things I thought were fun back then, I needed tap back into those things because
Yeah.
I I feel but my body physically and overall feel better that way.
Yeah. And what are you most proud of?
I'm actually really most proud of, I think, of the change in the conversation about mental health over all of those years. Um, a lot of people would think that I'd be proud of like just redesigning the mental health system, which was a big deal. But I'm really much more proud of since then, all of the people. I mean, when we first did that in when I was elected, it was like pushing this big boulder uphill because nobody wanted
Mm.
to talk about mental health and but in the 10 to 15 years past that, so many people have gotten into that movement to make change and to reduce stigma and to do great things that I'm really proud that I could have pushed the boulder to get it up over the top where people now really work on it because it's a lifelong challenge to improve mental
Mm.
health. And I'm really excited that I got to be part of people who'd gone before me and helping get what they'd worked on so hard moving. And so that now I can continue to watch it go. And that's been my favorite thing.
Yeah. Well, my final question is also always the same one. When are you at your happiest?
When am I at my happiest? Well, this is going to sound crazy, but I really like difficult challenges. And
Mhm.
I have found that the harder a challenge is or a problem where people say it's not fixable or it's not, we can't do whatever, I just really enjoy diving into those things and seeing what the options are and
Mhm.
figuring out what to do. And I'm really happy when I'm able to get into those difficult things that maybe not other people can or understand, especially in that mental health space, and sort of
Right.
untangle those messes, because it's something that only I can do, that God has given me this ability to get into those weeds and understand it, which I don't know why. And
Mhm.
so it's a lot of fun to be able to really use that talent and to make that then pull out and extrapolate from there to make it understandable and easy for other people.
Yeah.
That is really fun to me. And
Yeah.
those, it's really interesting. They don't come along that often, but when I get them, I just have this sense of feeling of just doing exactly what I was designed to do. And
Yeah.
that's the coolest feeling.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Renee, for today. I really
You're
enjoyed talking
welcome.
to
It's
you.
such a pleasure to meet you.